Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing episode 4 of the Under the Stairs Coffee Bar transformation. I dive into all of the details, adding the decor and the finishing touches, which is my favorite part. It's definitely come a long ways. It's becoming a really great space that I enjoy making coffee in multiple times a day. You can go back and watch any of the previous episodes if you'd like. I'll put a link here or at the end of this video. I've made a bit of a mess here and I can't wait to dive in and show you what we've got. So let's get started. They had a lot of stuff. The place was packed. I was specifically looking for some frames. I did find this one with a gold frame. I actually kind of like that art. $5, inexpensive. And then I picked up this one as well. I think this might be a little bit big, but it is $5. And I can't return it because my sweet friend Bailey chewed the corner right out of that one. So thanks, Bailey.
I was also looking for mugs at HomeGoods and they had quite a selection. I really like these blue and white ones here, but there were only 4 of them. And then I found these bird ones that I thought were beautiful, only $4.99, and they had 8. Then I was also looking for some trays, super overwhelmed with the selection here. I did grab this one, it was only $8, didn't end up really working for my space, but what a deal.
One of the previous episodes you might have seen a tray that I was trying to protect the surface of this with, and I didn't like the oval. I found this, it was on clearance for $14, so that's a steal. Make sure you're looking on the end caps and in little corners and stuff where you can find this stuff. This one has the grommets on the end, or the corners on the end that kind of mimic the hooks that are holding up my shelving. So I'm going to try this out as well. I just returned the flower cups that I showed you with the birds on them. I'm so bummed they did not work. They were a little bit big and hard to hold, and they just didn't fit right. So I was searching online and I went on the Dollar Tree website for other things and saw these really cool mugs. So I'm here at the Dollar Tree and I'm hoping that they have them. So let's go see. Crowded in there, so I was too embarrassed to film. I know people do that all the time, but it's just not me. So I did find a couple mugs. This one had 3 different styles, which I'm kind of wondering if that could work in the space. And then this is the one that I had gone in for originally that I'd seen online. It's not as dark as I thought it was, so it's still a pretty blue, and I kind of like the two-tone. Hopefully one of these works, but we're gonna go home and give my mom the hold test and see if they look good in the space. So I've gotten a little messy in here because I've started gathering all the things that I found that I'm hoping I'll be able to include in this space. I also gathered a few other things around my house that were just not being used, and I'm hoping to kind of repurpose them and tie in some more of the gold that I added with the hardware.
Now comes the fun part of decorating. I'm going to do these in sections, starting with the top of the buffet first, bringing in this tray, which I showed you earlier, and it ended up being the perfect fit for this. The purpose for this was really just to protect the surface of the buffet. Sometimes coffee or water would get spilled on it and ended up clouding the surface, so I'm just trying to give it longevity and protect it a little bit. Plus, I like the layer. Next, I found this cool little basket. It's been sitting around in my storage forever, but I thought it would be a great place to corral a bunch of the little stuff in this area. It was a little dusty and kind of chippy, but I liked that about it. Well, not the dust. I cleaned that off. Next, I brought back the tray that I had been using previously for under the coffee maker, and I thought it would be a good filler for behind everything, and it also would make a great piece if I needed to serve coffee or take coffee cups into another room. So I like when I can blend something that is functional as well as pretty. Then a cute little coffee pot. I snagged this at TJ Maxx or HomeGoods years ago. This little creamer and sugar set is a vintage find as well. I picked them up at a thrift store many years ago. I'm using the sugar pot to store some sweetener, and then we'll use the creamer to throw the trash in and then empty that when it's full. I do have a lot of vintage finds and antiques that I've gathered over the years, so I cannot link those, but I will link anything that I use that can be purchased. If you watched my episode about the baking center, you'll see I used these jars and then I replaced some of them, so I had some extra sitting around and I needed a jar for my decaf coffee, so this is the perfect jar for that. I also needed a spot for the little Via packets that are the instant coffee. We use those on occasion for like iced lattes and such, but I wanted to put them in a convenient spot, and I thought the top of that basket would be perfect. And then I just picked up these little candle holder votive glass holders at the dollar store. I really struggled with what to do with the coffee filters because they have been in a drawer, but it's really inconvenient, and I was trying to find some sort of napkin holder and I happened across this little mail slot envelope holder, and I thought maybe I could make this work. It was flexible, so I was able to kind of squish it in front of these things. Now, it might cause a problem when I take that jar out in the back, which will be very rare, but it ended up working out pretty good. Sometimes you just have to think outside the box and look at things in a different way. Not 100% sure what I'm going to put in these jars, but they fit on the bottom. I actually have another one I have to find. Now let's move on to the first shelf. I have been trying to find a little lamp for some mood lighting in this space, but nothing has been able to fit on that shelf that goes with the color or theme that I want. So I did find this uplight. I'm going to use this temporarily for now. It definitely goes with the colors, and it adds a little bit of ambient lighting that is good for the space. Going to add a touch of greenery here, and here you can see the light on.
So this was the mug that I originally went to Dollar Tree for that I had seen online. I like the blue, but I'm finding that I don't really love it with the blue of this cabinet. So they did have a black version, and I went back to my local one and found the black one, which I actually think looks more expensive. I like the look of it, the feel of it, and I think they'll look really pretty in here. So I snagged myself 8 of these for like $11, $12. It was very inexpensive.
These really did end up being perfect for the space. I like them way more than the blue. I didn't want to do a lot of black and white, but it kind of tended to gravitate that way, and I'm not mad about it. If you haven't noticed by now, I do enjoy using old books for layering and for height in any of my decorating scenarios. So I highly recommend, if you're at thrift stores, estate sales, any sort of sale that you can find really cool old books, $2 and under, you should snag them and just put them in your stash. While I wanted these shelves to be pretty, I also wanted to be able to add some functional pieces. So I have these old biscuit tins that are from Scotland, and I actually have 2 of them, which it's rare to find a pair that match, and they kind of had a fun color to them that might work here. So I'm going to go ahead and use this first one to fill it with extra tea that I have. You can see here I end up using one of the jars for some green tea. I am actually trying to drink this more often. It's supposed to give you really good energy and just be healthy for you. After so many of the hard things I've been through the last few years, I've not been making the healthiest choices and just putting myself last. So I'm trying to make a priority of that, and maybe having it out on the counter might help me. We'll see. And now onto something not so healthy, sweet treats. I wanted to add some cute little candy jars with treats in them. These little cookies are actually really good. They're a shortbread with a little bit of salt. You can get those at Costco. And then I also filled the second jar with another Costco treat, which is chocolate almonds. Not so bad for you. Everything in moderation, right? Now on to the top shelf. I repurposed this, was in here before, and I added it to the top shelf. It's an old enamel coffee pot. If you've been watching all the episodes, you've noticed I've changed my mind on art a few times. This was the one that I finally settled on, and it is because I'm kind of going with a historical theme based on our heritage and our ancestors that came over from Scotland and Ireland. So This is kind of a looking over the sea, the buffet's blue, and you'll kind of see what I'm doing here with another theme. Here I'm taking a really old frame and I'm prepping it to put a piece of art, or actually a print that my mom had ordered of the ship that my ancestor came over from Ireland on. I went ahead and scored the back with scissors. You could also use a razor blade. I just felt along the edge where the art actually met the frame and cut along there very carefully. I'm just trying to save the paper so I can put it back over the art and protect it when I put the new piece in. Here I'm just trying to loosen the little nails that are in there. I would not recommend using this tool. I would actually use a screwdriver, but I could not find it for some reason. And hopefully my dad's not watching this because he's going to be really mad at me. Not really. Well, maybe a little bit. They actually weren't in there very tight. I just loosened them up a little bit and then pulled them out with my fingers. Also, you could have used pliers. That might have been the smarter approach. Most art that is well framed has some sort of filler, foam, or something in the back, and then the piece of art, and then often a mat. This one was really old, so it did have a filler, and then this very light, fragile piece of art, which I'm going to save and sandwich in between. Now I'm going to go ahead and just cut out the art that I told you about that we'd ordered. I used the foam from the original frame, traced around generally the outside, and then cut it out with scissors. I always like to cut a little bit smaller than the frame, so I cut inside the line that I traced, but you don't want to cut too far if you don't have a mat, which this one does not, or it will show in the front of the glass. So I'm a little curious if any of you are interested in ancestry or get kind of excited about that kind of thing. I started researching our ancestry a number of years ago and I kind of got obsessed with it. It's so interesting. It intrigues me, the patterns of family and how that happens. So anyway, just a side note. Here I'm going to go ahead and sandwich that old art in between the foam and my new art in case I want to reuse it at some point. I don't want to get rid of it yet. And then I'm going to just do everything in reverse and reassemble this back in the frame and get it put in the space. I do like to do a little test to make sure that it fits in the frame properly before I put everything in. Sorry, it's a little out of shot, but it did end up fitting perfectly, and I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this and get it back in the space. My mom had also ordered the ship's manifest when she ordered the print of the boat, but they actually sent the wrong one with the wrong person's name on it. As cool as it looked, it really did not mean anything anymore because it was the wrong name. So I got creative and I went online to Ancestry.com. I went ahead and looked up my ancestor in my family tree, and then I went to the gallery to documents. You should be able to either search for it or it might even be in your research, but I found her New York passenger list and just printed that off on my printer. I ended up printing it off both horizontal and vertical because I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to use it, and you'll see here I try both of them. I didn't end up using either of the frames that I bought at Home Goods, but I'm sure I'll use them in another project. Obviously, I can't return the one that Bailey chewed on, but I did find this one in my storage, just in a box of frames that I keep on hand that I've picked up over the years. Here I'm using the same technique of tracing the backing to get the size that I need. Adding a little bit more greenery, and then of course some more books. Here's the second biscuit tin that I had, and I'm just going to go ahead and use that to store extra sweetener. I then added a little stoneware vase that kind of went with my creamer and sugar pot, and then an old vintage gold clock. I wanted to find some greenery for that little pot, I just haven't found it yet. This photo is the picture of my ancestor that came over on the boat. her husband, and her sister, so I just felt like it fit with the whole theme. I don't know how long this is going to last because I do get in and out of that space a little bit, but I wanted to add a little bench down there to see what it looked like. This is an oldie vintage find at an estate sale. This super old suitcase. I wanted to add a mirror in the space, so this round one kind of reminded me of a porthole that went with the whole boat and travel theme I've got going on. It's been sitting in my storage forever because it did not have any way to hang it. I went ahead and recruited my dad to help me add a hook to the back. If you're dealing with really old fragile wood like this, it can easily crack or split, so we pre-drilled a hole and then used a screw to pre-drill a little bit and then added the final screw just to be on the safe side. And of course my assistant Bailey was there being a big help as usual.
You want to give me that back?
And here I am hanging it. It worked out just perfectly. Next, we tackled the wall across from the buffet. There is not a lot of space and it's not very deep on this side, so it had to be something rather shallow. We had this old shelf sitting around. It actually came from my shop years ago. My mom had been using it for a while, but my dad had it in the garage and thought it could work. It needs a little bit of touch up, but I'm just hanging it here to kind of get an idea of whether or not I like it. And then we decided to repurpose this bell art that my dad had created actually back when Downton Abbey was a huge thing. And it was kind of a mini reproduction of the one that was in the downstairs space for the servants. So a couple more finishing projects. If you recall, we had to remove the door where the little mini fridge was because it was getting too hot in there. So we ended up cutting out the front of the door. And when I say we, I mean my dad. He used the power tools and just cut through the very edge of this. And then he was able to take pliers and pull the wood pieces out from the middle of the frame. Next, he found this metal panel at Lowe's. You can find them at most hardware stores, and sanded it a little bit. I dabbed matching paint color to the buffet itself. I considered gold, but I went with a neutral to kind of make it blend. And yes, I am dabbing and not brushing for a reason so that I don't get it all caught in the grooves, and it actually leaves a thicker coat that will self-level. Next, Dad scored it about 10 times, just using a straight edge to make a clean cut. Then he took it to the edge of the surface and bent it until it snapped. It was actually pretty easy. Be careful though, use safety equipment. Now I'm sure there is a specific part that I could have used to attach these to the back of the door, but I didn't have it, and I didn't have the time to go to Lowe's again. So I just went ahead and used my handy dandy hot glue gun, kind of tacked some spots on the corners, and then did it heavily around all the edges. It should last for a while. I probably will find the right parts at a later time, but just trying to get this project completed and done. A hot glue gun has to be one of the best inventions ever made, at least for DIYers and crafters. Again, with a quick Bailey break, he just kept finding new things. And now you may be asking yourself, Katie, where is the inspiration art that you started with? Well, I haven't forgot it. It isn't used in the space, but it is used in the entryway to the space, and I'll show you how I reframed it real quick. I ended up having a frame that was very similar to the size that I needed, and it actually had a really good mat in it, so I stole it off of this piece of art, which was something that I actually painted when I was a child. So my mom won't let me get rid of that, but I did just reuse the frame, and I'll save that for her to use later. And here it is. I think it's the perfect little entrance to this space.
that's the end of episode 4, which means that is a wrap on the entire series of me converting this understairs pantry into a coffee bar. I'm extremely pleased with how this turned out. It is a functional space now, and it is something I use daily, if not more than once a day, if you're a coffee drinker like myself. If you missed any of the past episodes, you can click right there and you can go back and see any of the finishes or things that I did in this space from beginning to end. I'll also include a list of everything we used in this project, so make sure you read the description below if you're interested in any of these things. Of course, all the vintage finds are one of a kind. At the least, hopefully this inspires you to do some creative stuff with things you have, or start hunting for things that you might add to your space as well. And per usual, if you want to see more DIY and decorating that I do around my 1910 farmhouse, then make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit that notification button so you don't miss future episodes. I do have a little bit of an idea about transforming this into a cocoa bar for the holidays, so stay tuned for that. Until next time.